Now let's move on to ethics. In terms of the approach of Buddhist ethics, the emphasis is on motivation. The actual external action is less important than the person's intention in committing that act. So even if someone actually causes harm to someone else, as long as they had compassionate motives, it will still create good karma for them. The goal in Buddhism is to get to the point where your motivation is always good, so you cannot accumulate bad karma even if you accidentally do a bad thing or hurt someone. The goal for Buddhists is to cultivate compassion for all sentient beings, which includes humans, animals, and the natural world. For people and animals, it is important to be kind to one another because they are also trapped in samsara. Therefore, anyone you come in contact with potentially could have been your mother, your father, your sibling, husband, wife, friend, etc. in a previous lifetime. So it cultivates this idea that we are all connected because of all the lives we've led. More than likely, we've had a connection with anyone that we meet in this lifetime. Therefore, you should even be compassionate to animals because they were probably people in previous lifetimes. And supposedly being compassionate towards an animal can help them develop enough good karma to come back in a human life form. So the emphasis in Buddhism is not so much on whether an action is right or wrong, allowed or not allowed, but whether or not it will help you on your path to enlightenment. Will this action help you stay awake and alert and cultivate good karma, or will it be a distraction or cause of attachment or ignorance? Buddhism also has a strong idea of the middle way. This goes back to the life of the Buddha when he realized that both indulging in pleasure constantly and extreme asceticism, in which you deny yourself any type of pleasure, are both equally inhibited to the spiritual life. So if someone is trying to achieve enlightenment, they should follow the middle way, in that they're trying to avoid extremes of indulgence or extremes of denying pleasures to oneself. In addition, Buddhism has what's called the Noble Eightfold Path, and if you remember, this was part of the last noble truth of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. If one wants to rid oneself of attachment, therefore getting rid of suffering, they need to follow the Eightfold Path. This will help them to eventually achieve enlightenment. It's important to note, however, that these steps are not considered something that are easy to achieve, and one has to take a very long time for each step. Each step in this path could take years, an entire lifetime, or several lifetimes to accomplish. So this is not an easy path to follow. So let's go through the steps in the Eightfold Path. The first one is right view, and right view could be understood as the understanding of Buddhist truths. In order to start your path towards enlightenment, you have to accept the truth of Buddhist doctrines, so that you can start working towards enlightenment and understanding the world in that way. The second step is right intention, so you have to have the intention to rid yourself of suffering and achieve enlightenment. It's of course not enough just to accept the truth of Buddhist doctrine, but then not do anything to achieve enlightenment. You have to have that intention as well. The third step, right speech, refers to simply not lying, gossiping, or using your words in a malicious or harmful way. The fourth step, right action, refers to the 5 precepts. These are a list of 5 things that Buddhists should do and not do, which we'll talk about in just a minute. The fifth step, right livelihood, refers to one's occupation or job. So you cannot have a job in which you make your money, make your living, off of the harm or suffering of others. For example, Buddhists are not supposed to become butchers because then they're making their living off of the killing of animals. So your job should be in accordance with your Buddhist acceptance of the worldview, and to not cause any harm or suffering to others. The sixth step is right effort. And right effort is simply that you are putting enough effort into trying to achieve enlightenment. You are taking this seriously and you are working hard on a regular basis to rid oneself of ignorance and attachment. The seventh step, right mindfulness, deals with awareness. So Buddhism has an emphasis on cultivating awareness of samsara, and awareness of one's own desires and attachments. And the 8th step, right concentration, deals specifically with meditation. Meditation is seen as the most powerful step in achieving enlightenment and cultivating this type of awareness. So meditating on a regular basis, as we saw in ritual, is very important for Buddhists. Now let's talk about the 5 precepts, which come from the 4th step in the Noble Eightfold Path of right action. So in Buddhism, instead of commandments or rules, there are precepts. These precepts are for lay people and not for those in the Sangha or the monks and nuns. They have additional precepts that they need to follow. The precepts are to abstain from taking life or murder, so not to kill anyone or anything else, to abstain from taking what is not given or stealing, to abstain from sexual misconduct, which is usually interpreted as sexual activity outside of marriage, to abstain from false speech, so no lying or using your words to hurt others, and to abstain from intoxicants that cause heedlessness. So this is usually understood as staying away from alcohol and drugs. In contrast to some other religions' rules, these are considered voluntary. Therefore, becoming a Buddhist doesn't necessarily mean you are bound to follow these, but of course it is encouraged that you voluntarily take on these 5 precepts, or else you will continue acquiring lots of bad karma. On holy days, some lay people choose to follow additional precepts to honor the holiday and to focus on spiritual practice and knowledge. So they might take on a couple extra precepts that monks and nuns are expected to do, like prohibiting luxuries or eating after 12 noon, in order to focus on their own spiritual development. For monks and nuns, however, there are much more stringent rules and precepts that govern their everyday lives. As you can see, many of the precepts are the same as those for the lay peoples, but monks and nuns have additional ones, such as not taking food at inappropriate times, which basically means after 12 noon. Monks and nuns usually wake up at around 3 or 4 in the morning to begin their day. They also eat 2 meals a day, one in the early morning around 6 or 7, and then their dinner is just before 12 noon. So they are on a very different schedule, and this restriction is supposed to encourage the middle way of the Buddha. He didn't advocate starving, but also didn't want people to have more than they absolutely need, because then it becomes a distraction as well. Monks and nuns are also prohibited from singing or dancing or any form of entertainment such as that, not necessarily because it's bad, but because it's a distraction. Monks and nuns are expected to devote all their time and energy into achieving enlightenment, so these forms of entertainment can lead them away from that path. They are also to abstain from wearing perfume, cosmetics, and jewelry. This is also a means to cultivate humility, and that they should not have anything more than they need, because having nice things will encourage you to create an attachment to those things. They're also not supposed to sit in high chairs or sleep on luxurious beds. Again, to cultivate humility so they don't think they're above anyone else, and to not get too attached to sleep or their bed, because if it's too comfy, you're going to become attached to it. They are also not supposed to handle money. This has changed a lot in more recent times because it's quite hard in our modern world to go about our day without handling money. But traditionally, monks and nuns are just supposed to live on what is given to them when they beg and the donations of their local community, and they're not supposed to have any dealings with money. There is, however, in Buddhism, still the emphasis on non-attachment. So Buddhists are not even supposed to become attached to these precepts. You cannot use them to judge other people or cling to them as a means of creating good karma. Still, the emphasis is on cultivating good intentions, so that eventually you won't need to pay much attention to these precepts. Your motivations will be good enough that you can simply move beyond them and work from that intention. Experience in Buddhism is definitely mystical, because there is no God or deity before which to have a numinous experience. Buddhist experience is also centered on the self, so it is a mystical experience, But interestingly, it's not mystical because the individual is joining with the divine, because there is no divine. It's really a mystical experience in that the individual is joining with him or herself and the universe around one. In meditation, which is the foundational experiential aspect of Buddhism, the goal is to empty your mind of thoughts, so that really you are emptying yourself of your individuality, because the goal is to better understand the no-self doctrine, that there is no you as separate and unique from everything else. So you are supposed to not think about anything except being aware of how your body is feeling and the noises around you. So you become more and more aware to your universe that you live in and the sensations that you're experiencing. In Buddhist cultures, there is a total integration between the religion and the society. In Buddhist countries such as Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Sri Lanka, the monarchy or government is intimately related to the Sangha, and usually helps support Buddhism and the community of monks and nuns. We already talked about how in Thailand, the king is still expected to spend time in a Buddhist monastery before coming to power. Additionally, the laity and the Sangha mutually support each other and need each other to survive. The Sangha depends on the support of the laity so they can focus completely on their own enlightenment. In order to be freed from regular obligations like financial or family concerns, they need the laity to provide them with food, to help around the monastery, and to give them all the necessities and taking care of the monastery building. This way, they can devote more time to their spiritual practices. Additionally, the laity needs the Sangha to cultivate good merit or karma. Giving to the monks and nuns, supporting them, taking care of them, is supposed to be a critical way that householders can create good karma. The laity understands that in this life it is not their destiny to become a monk or a nun, but they can support their local Sangha to create enough good karma that in a future life they can become a monk or a nun and hopefully achieve enlightenment. The Sangha also provides important instruction. The Sangha are the local experts on Buddhist doctrine and practice, so the laity depends on the monks and nuns to teach them about their religion, so that they can also start moving towards enlightenment. Traditionally, the Sangha has functioned in society in strictly these two ways: to provide instruction and merit-earning opportunities to the society in which it lives. However, in recent times, many Buddhist monks have decided that it is their responsibility to assist their communities in other ways as well. This is what has been termed socially engaged Buddhism. It goes back to a Vietnamese monk named Thich Nhat Hanh, who has written many books and is a well-known and well-respected figure today. He started many programs to help rebuild Vietnam after the war and publicly opposed the Vietnam War. This was one of the first times that Buddhist monks became actively involved in politics, and it has now become much more common. Engaged Buddhism is a general term, but there are many movements now where monks actively try to change and better their society. In Thailand, for example, monks join the struggle to save many of their local forests, even ordaining some trees as Buddhist monks because the forests in which they traditionally wandered and meditated were being cut down. Also in Burma, where there is a fierce dictatorship, the monks have taken an active role in opposing the government and its practices. They try to apply the lessons of the Dharma, meditation, and nonviolence to these social problems to try and correct them and encourage people to try and change these instances of injustice.